Hi all, welcome back to another episode of Coot GCC podcast series. This is Shankar. I'm a founder of Coot and going to be a host for today's episode. We regularly discuss with various different GCC leaders in understanding their culture and processes and how are they empowering the efficiency for their headquarters. And today we have a special guest with us, Nilesh Thakker. He's a president of Zinnov. He's an alumni of IIT Bombay as well as University of Houston, and had a long-standing career in the transformation of technology for the Fortune 500 companies. And he's also an entrepreneur. I always have fond memories, discussions with entrepreneurs. He founded a company called Metrics, which is one of the earlier company in trying to disrupt the SEO practice way back in 1998. And from then he also worked with companies like Intuit, and he transformed the way how Intuit is functioning in India, right? From a delivery center to he transformed into one of the best working place in Asia. Then he worked with companies like Kayak, and I think I can keep on going it, right? I think, but as he has led on various transformation work for Fortune 500 companies, and and as a management consulting company has set a benchmark on establishing GCCs in India. So with the limited words, I welcome Nilesh to our podcast. Welcome, Nilesh.
Thanks, Shankar. It's really my pleasure to be talking to you today. So, looking forward to our discussion.
Oh, thanks. It's our pleasure, Nilesh, in talking to you. And I believe I'm going to learn a lot from you in this conversation. I'm sure our audience also. I made a very quick, brief introduction about you, but our audience would love to hear about your experience. Nilesh. So could you tell in your own words of your, the multi decades of experience?
Sure. As you rightly said, I did my IIT in 1985. I graduated as an electrical engineer from IIT Bombay, and then went to Houston to do my master's. And after that, took on various jobs. First, I started with a very small company. We were 4 people, and we were making equipment for the defense industry. So, where I used my image processing background to build systems for the defense industry there. It was a very useful experience. When you join a small company, you have to do everything from, cleaning the desk to, doing your coding and talking to customers. And so, from very early in my career, I was able to work directly with customers, and that was, I think, a foundational but before even I went to the US, my father was a businessman, and I used to help him in his business. And so I had kind of gotten used to working independently in a business, kind of getting things done. So that has always been with me until now. And so after the initial years at the small company, then I joined. Then actually started a company with my one of my managers called Metrics, as you mentioned, which was in 1998 in the dot com, the middle of the dot com era, and we were helping. That there was even the word SEO was not formed at that time, and we were trying to figure out how people can optimize their website so more and more people can find things and can get to the site. Unfortunately, because of the dot com bubble and all that happened, we had to didn't continue very far. And at that point, I joined Intuit. Intuit had just started to think about building an online product. They were a desktop company, and because of my experience with online, it was a very good fit for them and for me both. And I really learned a lot of things at Intuit. I I was part of the product called QuickBooks, which was the biggest product for the company, and it was for software for small businesses. And so I joined the online team, and very quickly, in about a year and a half, we released online product. And then as we were growing and it was doing really well, we were having a really hard time hiring talent. Our office in Intuit's office in Mountain View, California, is right next to Google. So, Google was also hiring very aggressively, and so it was a real competition to hire talent. So at that point, I was talking to my CTO and saying, hey, we should explore other avenues for talent. And Intuit is a very profitable company, so we never had a cost pressure. So it was never a cost equation for us. It was always a talent. So that was something which was, and this is in 2004. time frame we were thinking about this. So at that time, usually people used to think about India as a cost arbitrage play, but we took a very different approach. We're saying we're going to go for the best talent. And so in 2000, so when I was talking to my CTO, he said, why don't you lead this initiative for us? So I took that on, and then we set up the Intuit's office in Bangalore in 2005. And as I said, we started from day one to build a very top a company or a location where people want to be there. They want to build great products. Very first year, our per capita patent filing from the Bangalore office was higher than Mountain View. So because people
Wow.
really got, yeah, in the very first year, within first 3 years, we were the one of the top 10 most favored sought after companies to work for in India. So as you can see that because we started with the foundationally, we also built a very nice office where people were very excited to be there. Our office in Bangalore became like almost like a model office where people used to come and check it out. And it was not just to but it was to create an environment where people want to be there. They want to work with each other. They want to collaborate. So that became the model, and it has continued to be very successful. Now there are more than 2,000 people in Intuit. A large portion of the revenue of Intuit now comes from products built completely out of the Bangalore office. So a very successful initiative. And after Intuit, I joined a company called Kayak. My ex-boss at Intuit had started this online travel company called Kayak, which is still around. And so he asked me to join him, and then I joined and that was another very good experience working on a very fast-growing, highly used product called Kayak. And and then after Kayak, I joined another startup, uh, which also called Net Shelter and Empowered. The Net Shelter was then renamed to Empowered. Again, very fast-growing, build products, and that was my DNA was to build work people to build products. So that continued, and then after that, when we sold that company to PC Magazine at that point, and then I was exploring other things to do, and Pari Natarajan, who I had worked with that when I set up the Intuit Center in Bangalore in 2004-5 timeframe, I'd worked with Zinnov, so I was a customer of Zinnov in that time frame. So I knew Pari and Vamsi and the founders then. And so Pari approached me to join Zinnov. And so in 2000, in about 11 years ago, I joined Zinnov. And then we started evolving we were a consulting company initially. We were consulting companies to how to set up centers. Then a few years ago, one of our customers said, hey, this proposal looks great, but why don't you help set it up? And so that's how we started. Now we help customers not only design and do the consulting, but we also actually set it up for them, operate it for them, and create a great. And so the goal is always to build world-class GCCs, which are focused on serving their customers in the best possible way, and rather than just being a cost play. Cost is always an important factor, but that should not be a primary factor, and that's been the approach we've taken from day one. So
Yeah, great to hear, Nilesh. I think I got a few other aspects. Probably I have not got from the no the online stuff. So really great. I think you mentioned about Zinnov, right? I think to our audience, could you quickly tell about what is Zinnov and what are the different practices and how are you supporting the global companies in setting up GCCs in India?
yeah, so Zinnov is almost a 22 years old management consulting company. Our founder, there are three co-founders, and Pari is one of them, who's the CEO. And he actually was also an engineer in the US, working in California, where I am right now. And his company asked him to set up a center in India. So he came back to India, and then he set up the center. And that's when he realized that, hey, there's a business here. We can help other companies set up centers. So that's how we started the business. So that's kind of the foundation. There are two main areas we to practice. Practice which I'm heading right now is we call globalization excellence. It's helping companies think about global talent strategy. How do you leverage global talent? Where should you set up a center? What kind of work you should do in the center? What kind of work you can do with the outsourcing companies? So those are the kind of work we do. And then, as I said earlier, we also help them now set it up, uh, everything which is required to set up the center, right from the designing and location analysis, where you should set up the financial plan, the business case, to actually building it out, creating entity to hire the people, do HR, finance, payroll, real estate, everything which is required to run an office, except the core technology part, which the company employees would be responsible for. We take care of that. So, so that's what we do in the practice which I'm running. There's another part of the practice, my colleague Siddhant Rastogi, he runs that practice, and they work with outsourcing companies, service providers. They work with enterprises on their go-to-market plans. They come up with channel partnerships. They also do M&A and due diligence for acquisition of companies. So that's also a very fast-growing business for us. So there are two main business areas and very different segments of the customer, and both all of our work is consulting based, but then we actually deliver outcomes to the customer. It's not only a consulting, but we actually deliver key business outcomes to the customer. That's kind of the DNA for the company. So
Sure, Nilesh, sure. GCCs are the buzzwords, or no, it occupies the Times of India front page, right? I think it need all kind of attention, right? I think, every other day I see some events are happening, people are talking, right? So, and what I saw is like when one of the, what is it, what I read or heard somewhat about is like one of the aim or objective of is to bring global leadership into India, right? So, could you tell little more about what do you mean by global leadership from GCCs and how do you do it? I think there are various facets to it, but I would like to ask a overwhelming question and know your thoughts, Nilesh.
yeah, I mean, I think, see, the global leadership meaning a leader of the company, the location, in the US we call zip code, or in India we call pin code. The zip code or pin code is not important right now. I think it's what matters is a talent zone, where the talent is. So, right, a lot of companies have more than 50, 60, up to 70 to 80% of the talent sitting in India. So if you have such a huge percent of your talent sitting in India, if your leadership is not here, you're not optimizing the outcomes out which are coming out of that, right? So that's one thing. Also, these people who are working, they are very smart people in India who also have ambitions to be the leader of the company. So having a career path which takes them to the leadership role is also critical. So we have a number of examples where we have helped set up centers. So we have a customer called Data Excel. They set up center. We helped them set it up about 4 years, 5 years ago almost. The head of the center is now this global CTO for the company, right? So he's now running the entire engineering and
Oh,
IT sitting in Pune, right? So that's very common. Jay Dorsey, who is running the center for British Telecom, he's responsible for doing the entire employee experience for 100,000 employees for British Telecom sitting in Bangalore, right? So this is very common now. It's more and more, more and more roles are being done out of there. Adobe had a leader sitting out of Noida very early, almost in the mid 2000s, right? So he was running the entire business unit sitting, including the P&L for the product, sitting out of the Noida office. So that's what it means. I think it is a natural evolution that when you have such a big portion of your employee base sitting in a location, you want to have leadership sitting next to it, and so that's and all of these people are smart people who have their own career ambitions and they are able to deliver. So it's a natural thing. In fact, I think more companies should be using India as a pipeline for leadership, not only for individual contributors, but for global leadership. I mean, because there are really smart, as you can see, even in the US, I mean, a lot of the CEOs are of Indian descent, and so these are all right. So it's a natural leadership comes naturally to us, and so it's a huge asset for companies to be here. So in addition to the talent, they can get leadership also.
no, I think I completely agree with you, Nilesh. Even I was talking to a few leaders. I think there's a person called Go sitting, and it's like I was saying that I think in India we praise a lot about Sundar Pichai, Satya Nadella, but she never studied outside India. She never even worked outside India except for this one, and now able to have a global role, right? So that could be aspiration or inspiration for many, right? Because they don't have the as much of access, right? Studied in a premier institute or working outside, right? But in a different, trying to double click, right? What are the challenges you see, or what are the things you need to ensure when we talk to the headquarters? I think again, within this also there are many GCC that, hey, we are not a headquarter, GCC here, we are one company, right? I think that's what the everyone talk. But because Zinnov is a consultant, you are negotiating with the company in setting up a GCC, and that time you're also saying that, hey, get a global leadership here. How does the process work? Could you, without naming a particular client, could you walk us through how does it happen?
Yeah, I don't think we necessarily have to sell. I mean, the people, as I said, the CTO I mentioned, Vishal, who became the CTO. I mean, he became on his own merit. I mean, he performed it so well that this company itself said, "Hey, you're basically running engineering for us. Why don't we give you the title?" Effectively, so he was kind of doing the job. So I think it's almost the people themselves, if they deliver the outcomes for the businesses are not, they are looking for people who deliver outcomes, right? They deliver for the customer. And so if you are a leader who's delivering for the customer, they want you to get the title because that's, you are delivering it. So I think it's not like I am making it happen. It's the leaders themselves are making it happen. We we just find the right leaders for these companies, and when they deliver, I mean, there's another example, Srini Basawa, he's working with the company called Bazaar Voice, and he sits out of the Bangalore office. And he started with 0 employees. Now he's at 275 employees or close to 300 employees. But he is a SVP of the company. He's running some product lines sitting right up to the India office. So we didn't do it. Srini himself did it because he delivered for the company, and he continues to deliver for the company. So um, we I think uh, some of these people have worked in the US, so they know what it takes to be a good global leader. That has helped. But I say, as you just mentioned, this lady you talked about, she's never even studied outside, and she's a global leader too. So you don't necessarily have to. I think it's just focusing on, hey, understanding the business, understanding the customer, and figuring out how do we don't focus on cost as a primary criteria. Focus on the revenue, focus on how are we solving for the customer. If you're not on the, I say this to my customers, that if your GCC is not in the top 5 priorities for your CEO, then you're not important enough, right? If if so, figure out what it takes to become the top 3 or top 5 priority for your CEO of the company, then you are critical for the business, right? And so if there are so many leaders I can give names of who have done this very successfully, and
The leaders have done it themselves, right? It is not primarily. Could you tell a little bit of, apart from setting up GCC, right? The legal aspect, and I think which are all, I would say, the procedural aspect. How does the identifying the roles to be done in the GCC, and how do you negotiate? Means, where does the baton stop from Zinnov to the leaders?
yeah, that's a good question. So we actually work with the customer right from day one as to what should they do we call it platform portfolio analysis. So we look at all their the work they do, the kind of talent they're looking for, kind of problems they're trying to solve, and then we work with them as to what makes sense to transition in what phases. So we work with them. Based on that, we help them find the right leaders in India. So that's one of the key things which we do is make sure that we help them find the right leader and that's something which we are very proud of. In fact, one of the things I'm very proud of is every leader we have placed in our GCC, nobody has left. We have 0% attrition at that level. So right, and India 0% attrition, and over the last 6-7 years, as you can imagine.
Unheard
So
of.
so finding the right leader for that company is probably one of the key things we do. And then we the other thing we help the leaders is that because we take care of all the back office. See, when I did the GCC in 2005, I spent a lot of my time on the back office, like transportation and catering and real estate and finance and all that. I was spending almost 50% of my time on non-product stuff, right? So the whole idea of our practice is that the leader should be spending 90% of their time on their customer and their products and their people. So now, if you do that, you're able to show the outcome, the impact of your work even more. Because if you're spending time on trying to figure out right catering or right transportation, the company doesn't see the value. I mean, it's important, it needs to be done, but it's the impact of that is not going to be on the revenue of the company, right? So what I tell the leaders is focus on focus on your customer, and we will focus on you, our customer. And if we are able to give them that freedom to spend more time on their customer and their products and their employees, then they're able to show the results in much more effectively. And I think that's probably the way we contribute the best. So in
Great.
fact, that's one of the things which I tell leaders. And see, in India, because initially, as I said, I was spending more than 50% of my time, and that has become part of a lot of people GCC leaders' roles, and they're comfortable with that, but they need to get out of that. They should hire somebody who takes care of the operational part, and they should focus on the customer, their products, their technology, and their operations, and figure out how they can add. Don't worry about the cost, worry about the top line. Are they helping the top line, right? Then they'll automatically become global leaders, right? If they see, global leaders are people who help to increase the top line, right? And that's how I would think of it. If you are thinking of cost and all that, then you are going to be the instead of the P&L, you will be the L part of the P&L, right? So it will always be something you want to cut. If you are growing the revenue, there's not going to be any cut. There's going to be always figuring out how you add more. So
No, it's a different mindset, right, Nilesh? But trying to understand whether is it an exceptional outlier in the GCCs what is operating, I think whether it's 1700, 1800, or is it what you're seeing is normal? Because we also day and day out talk to various leaders, right? In the podium they talk differently, but when you go and ask, hey, this is what you want to do, then the behavior is very different. So how do you see this, Nilesh?
yeah, I mean, I think it is still a work in progress. We have to get out of that. This has happened over the last 25, 30 years, right? So it is going to take time to change it. But you see more and more. So we have a maturity, curve, which we call it, where depending on what kind of work the GCC does, we put them in that maturity. So now more, and we have the highest phase is what we call the transformation GCCs. Means that these are transforming the company. These are changing the company they are working for. More and more are getting into that transformation zone, but there is still a pretty small percentage. And so the idea is that we want to keep pushing to the right into the transformation zone. And that's still something work in progress. As I said, companies like Intuit and all are already there. I said a large portion of the revenue comes out of products built out of the India office. A lot of innovation is happening there. Lot of global leaders are sitting out of there. So you can see that companies are already doing it effectively. So you just have to make sure that you are constantly keeping an eye on, focus on the top line, focus on how you're helping the business grow. Then I think you'll automatically make the right calls. So
Sure.
when we started into it, our goal was not to, as I said, cost is never going to go away because it's an important part of what people set up. But that can be a focus. That's more the output, but the focus should be how am I growing the business. So the very first year, so if Intuit has an award called a Scott Cook Innovation Award. Scott Cook is the founder of Intuit. Almost every year, some person from India wins that award. And so the Scott Cook Innovation Award was won by a person in India within the first 2 or 3 years, right? This was a brand new center. We just had less than 100 people and somebody. So because the focus was on creating the customer awareness, making them understand the customer. The more and more you bring their employees close to the customer. In fact, there are examples where a company, changed the focus from cost to product development and they started bringing customer awareness. The number of patent filing doubled, right? So from the India Center. So think focusing on top line, focusing on bringing the knowledge of the customer to the employees, not focusing on the operational part. You obviously hire a head of operations or hire a company like Zinnov to do the operations, but focus on your customer, your products, your technology, and your people, and you'll see that it's completely different mindset. So
And multiple points, multiple questions are firing in my head, right, as you speak. So one quick question is very, very tactical. So after setting up the GCC, Nilesh, how is your engagement with the company? Like, is you give the baton on some day, or you leave it like, from here you are independent, or you say that there is some regular engagement. Why I'm asking is like, because you are introducing the employee there, whether the negotiation of the work, I mean, probably not negotiation, but kind of scoping of the work, what should be done, is it done on the day one, or the leader primarily comes into the scene and then he started shaping up, or it is in between, no,
yeah,
anything in between.
yeah. So we work with companies for anywhere from a year to several years. As I said, Bazaar was is a customer for the last 5 years, right? So it really depends on. But sometimes the company will we will build a center for the company and then transition to their team over a year or 2 years. But more and more customers are staying with us longer because the value we are able to bring. But even after they leave, we have a product called GCC platform, right? Where it's a subscription service with a lot of the GCCs in India subscribe to, and they get a lot of thought leadership, point of views. We do a lot of events where they are able to. In fact, very soon we're going to have a Confluence event in July 17th, 18th, where we have, I don't know if you've attended or not, but hopefully maybe you can attend this year. Uh, where close to 4 to 5,000 people from, it's the biggest tech conference in India. They come, and a lot of the GCC leadership is there, both internationally and here from India. And so, so our customers in the GCC platform get access to all of that. We do a lot, as I said, we do a lot of CXO events. We publish a lot of content. We publish a lot of data, thought leadership. So they're able, like we also have annual comp data, talent, total rewards package, which we do for our customers, all of that. So those are all. So even after a customer is, we are not running the center for them. They continue to work with us on the platform side. So there are customers for almost for a long, long time. On the technology part, we have a person on the staff who's the chief of staff who will work with the leader to figure out what kind of work should be done, how do you transition that. So we continue to work with the leadership on how do you help them transition. More and more we are getting involved in the how, not only how to transition, but to do the transition for them, do the learning and development for them. So we are going up the value chain there also. We are starting to help companies build up their COEs for AI. AI is becoming the core part of a GCC now. So we're helping companies to figure out, what should be the org structure? What should be how do you decide? How do you optimize the use cases, right? What kind of people you want to hire? All of that stuff we are now starting to work with customers on. So that's how we get involved but the actual core technology work is once we hire the leader, they take care of that. They lead that. So again, the idea, as I said earlier, we want them to focus on building products and technology, and we'll take care of everything around it. So
Sure. I think you are not against, but you talked about like the bot model is not the best model for the GCC, right? So could you touch upon why the bot model is not best and how Zinnov, what the model you are following, Nilesh?
yeah, so the bot is, as you know, the employees are the employees of the service provider, the company which is creating the bot. They are their employees. They are not the employees of the company, right? So in fact, certain companies who do the bot, because of labor regulations, they can't even interview the people they're in the bot, because if they interview, it can be considered to be, they can say, hey, these are, if I interview an employee, for some labor laws in, at least in the US,
Okay.
it can imply that they are my employee directly, right? So some companies would not even interview. They may talk to the employee, but it's not called an interview. But more than that, BOT is basically, it's basically outsourcing with a contract to transfer after a few years. So there's no difference between outsourcing and a BOT effectively, right? So they are
Okay.
not your employees. You can't build your culture. You don't have any ownership on the kind of work. I mean, you can tell what work to be done, but you can't control the work that is being done. Also, all of that is happening so. Whereas what we do is the very from day one, the employee is the employee of the company, right? They get the employee's payroll. I mean, the company's paycheck, right? The pay slip comes from from the company. We are just doing the back office. So you get all the advantages of a BOT, but the employees or your culture is your culture. The people are working for your managers, right? Your leaders. They are doing the work. They are interacting with your customers. They are understanding the product. So it's all the systems which they're using. They are if you're doing a work day, they are using your systems. So you are part of the company. Whereas on a BOT, you're in a completely different environment. You don't have control on the culture. You can't control that. All of that is under their control. Also, the kind of benefits you want to provide is part decided by the other company. So it's all, and then after 2, 3 years later, the transfer happens. And at that point, you have to deal with the transfer and all the things which go with it. Some people may not want to transfer. So all these people who were there, they may not want to transfer. So you don't have control. You don't have control over the data, the IP, the experience, the culture, all of that. So it just seems like why do that? I mean, just go for the GCC. Earlier it used to be harder to build a GCC, but it's not any harder, right? It's not very hard to do that. So why take that suboptimal path to get there? So
Definitely, even it doesn't make sense, but not sure for some reasons now people might be following.
yeah,
Uh,
but now there are almost 1900 GCCs, right?
right,
So
correct. The playbook, or even it's now completely streamlined process. The whole ecosystem also evolved.
exactly,
Got it.
exactly.
Got it. So you mentioned multiple times about Intuit has created the IP, right? The multiple patents. But frankly, when I ask these to many leaders, one of the challenge they tell is one of the reasons, or it could be the I would say even lame duck reason is like the income tax laws in India, right? Which is prohibiting in creating patent from in India. What are your thoughts, Nilesh, and how you encourage people to create patent from here? Yeah, I have multiple, sub questions to it, but would like to get your thoughts first.
Yeah, I mean, recently I know there's been some changes in the laws, which I've heard about that recently. We never had that issue earlier, but 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 the way this is done is a transfer, this is a just an R&D, like a service subsidiary for the global office, right, for the headquarters. So the IP and all that is owned by the company, right? And that's like today, if you suppose you work with an Infosys, all the work which is IP work which is done for you, you own that. Infosys doesn't own it. So there's no difference between an Infosys and your subsidiary doing it, right? Because this is also a services company for your company. They just happen to be exclusively working for you. So, I mean, I don't want to give you any legal thing because I know I'm not a lawyer,
Right.
but until now we have never had a issue. Now I have recently heard that there are some issues with it, and I can get back to you on that. But until now we've never had a issue with creating IP from India. So
No,
uh,
but then if I ask the other way, there are very large GCCs having 15,000 employees, 20,000 employees. There are so many, and the IP creation is not again not the common benchmark, right? It is mostly the cost efficiency and various other
yeah.
factors. So why that is a this one nothing because you have the bird's eye view would like to get in
Yeah, I
no
mean, I think it's primarily, I think, as I said, they're used to working. A lot of company, I was talking to like a head of, I was trying to hire a leader in HR, and I was talking to that person. So this person has been working for this company for a long time, and they think they are an outsourcing company for this mothership. So even the employees here, they're thinking they're still in that old mindset that they are an outsourcing company, right? So I think partially is also the leadership has not changed the way to the outlook of what we do here. Like they said, we create a menu of delivery for our mothership. Like, no, you are the company. You should be thinking of the customer. You should be thinking about building technology for your global customer, for your global teams. Right. So the way you think about it is, build something, think about so like if you go to an Infosys employees customer is like suppose I am in Intuit and I had a contract with Infosys. For the Infosys, I am the customer. right? For an Intuit employee, the customer is using Intuit's product as a customer, right? So the GCC employee should be thinking of the customer is the company's customer, not some person sitting in the headquarters, right? Don't think of this as you are an outsourcing segment of this company, right? So the mindset needs to change. I think partially is because they're used to working that. The more and more the new leadership and the is changing that, and that's why you're seeing a lot more, really awesome work going on. I mean, Signa Ray, she is part of this ATM company called, Diebold. There's a lot of new AI work. She led it from the India office. Like Jay Doshi I talked about, he's doing a lot of AI work right sitting out of the Bangalore, and some of this is like they may not file IP for this or patent for this,
Okay.
but this is really forward-looking work, which is, in all practical reasons, it's IP for the company. So, so a lot of good work is happening. Maybe they're not calling it IP because of some tax regulations or whatever it is, but if you look at the work which is being done, it's really state-of-the-art work. So
Sure, sure, sure. The other aspect to the GCC is like, working with the ecosystem, right? Because when you talk to the headquarters, you fix an objective saying that, hey, this GCC is going to do X, right? This could happen through their employees, right? Or it could also happen through working with someone who has already done it. For example, there might be a product which is out there which could do it better, right? So again, how do you work with the ecosystem, especially with startups, Nilesh?
meaning locally in India, you mean?
Whether it in India or whichever the other places, right? I think in the headquarters, what they do, we don't control, right? But primarily, you are here to establish here, right? So when you discuss with the headquarters, do they come up with a clear objective? Hey, we are opening the center in India for XYZ reasons, and find which is the least what is the resistant path, right? I think you go there. Rather than being restricted only to, hey, how can we do it only through our employees? So how do you encourage them to work with the ecosystem?
No, no. Okay. So actually, again, that partially depends on the leaders who are here, but it's actually becoming more and more common to work with startups. In fact, runs this what's called a startup accelerator for the various companies, right? Where we get collect a bunch of startups and then they work with the company's leadership in India. So in fact, startup accelerators are pretty more common in India than actually in the US, right? So that's a very India thing, which and it has worked out really well. So companies are encouraging, even the headquarters is encouraging this participation. In fact, we have another customer, a biotech customer. They are working with one of the universities in India, and they're doing some research work there. So both with startups and with research organizations, that is starting to open up. More and more companies are doing that. In fact, one other interesting thing which is now even happening more and more. See, because all these companies which are in India, for example, BMC Software, right? BMC Software sells software to other companies. Those companies are also in India. So now the India teams themselves talk to each other,
Okay.
right? So actually that is becoming more and more common too, that the collaboration, in fact, Jay Doshi from British Telecom had told me where he gave me an example where they were trying to buy some software from a company and it was, both the companies were in India, but all the contracts were going to the US and it's getting tangled up. And so the leaders met here and they resolved it in 2 days, right? So, and now they're even collaborating on a regular basis. So actually that is happening more and more. In fact, BMC Software has a customer center in Pune. So when a customer of theirs is visiting their office, they also invite them to come to the Pune office and do the customer meetings there in the Pune office. So that is actually so all the way from working with the startups, working with the universities, and working with other companies on other collaborations is becoming more and more common. And we actually encourage some of that. We actually make the connections because we know all these companies pretty well. So it's part of if we are part of the GCC platform, we can make that connections to do that. So so that is that signing. In fact, I mean, you do revenue. One of the things you should explore is how can you sell through the GCCs, right? Because a lot of the 50-60% of the people already here, the software which these enterprise companies are selling is probably going to be used more in India than anywhere else. So, the decision can be made right here rather than having to go to headquarters. So
You actually you hit another interesting point, Nilesh. So we also advise various product companies, right? So for example, someone in the say data FinOps, right? The cloud FinOps, the optimizing the cloud cost. So when we
right.
go and talk to some good designations here, we say that hey, this is what something, but we get an answer saying that hey, everything is fine. We can be maximum of an influencer, but the decision is made there, and which we are hearing more often than not, right? I think very less time we say that hey, the decision. I think probably for because the answer they gave is like if it is a product which is used across a company, then it's predominantly the headquarters make a decision. But we say that hey, there is a very pointed solution which is primarily used predominantly India because the whole setup is in India. But even
Yeah.
then, the decision making happens there. So there's a paradox, right? As much we
Yeah. So
talk
I think
about,
that a little bit is on the leader wanting to take the initiative. So yeah, and we can help with that. We can work with them, but it really, at the end of the day, like if we are like the CTO for Data Excel is sitting in Pune,
right?
all the technology decisions about buying a tech product, he's making them, and
Got it.
Sitting in Pune, right? So it's not like they can't do it. Is that some leaders they, you know, they may, and some companies may have some a procurement team in the US decides that, but it really
Mhm.
depends on the relationships you build, the influence you're able to create. So those are all the things. It does take some work. It doesn't have nobody's going to just give it to you. But if you
Correct.
show them why this is better, I told you about Jay Doshi and that we talked about. That wasn't a natural thing. But then he saw that this was going on and he took the initiative and said, hey, let me talk to these people and fix it, right? And when they saw it, everybody said yes. So I think you have to just show the advantages of moving it here. In fact, one of the other things, vendor management, all these companies use outsourcing still, right? Everybody using outsourcing. So earlier the vendor management office used to sit in the US, but all the vendors are here in India. So now the vendor management offices are now sitting in India too. So because it allows for better collaboration, better relationships. You are able to meet more frequently. Able to meet in person. So that is also starting to happen. I'll see that in the future, even the procurement offices will start moving to India, and then the global procurement will happen from here. So I think that's another thing you have to think about. But I think little bit of effort is maybe on the current leaders to figure out how to make it happen. And also think about, hey, should we bring the procurement office here? Because with all the procurement, like 50% of the procurement is happening in here, you can do it cheaper here and do it better here. So
Absolutely, absolutely, right. I think interesting. I think these are all our practical, what we say day in. So, you also your portfolio companies also work extensively with the IT services because in some form, they may be plugging the gap where for a quick need of resources. Or how do you see that? How do you work with them, Nilesh?
yeah, I mean, I think so. There's a concept of core and context, right? You must be familiar with that. Something which is core to the company. Like if I'm building AI technology for the company, which is IP for me, then or it's a user experience issue for my customer, then I want to build it in my GCC. But if I'm doing SAP maintenance or some which is not core to me, it's important, I need it, or I have to customize Salesforce, I have to customize Workday. It's important for to run my business, but it's not what I sell to my customer. Then I think an outsourcing company may be better place to do it because first of all they may have better expertise in working on Salesforce than I can. So we make that decision all the time where we work with if there is something which is core to you, you build in GCC. Something which is important but may not be something which is critical for you, you can work with the partners to do it. So and that allows you to, it also gives you some flexibility of up and down because you may not need this customization all the time. You may just need it in spurts. So you don't have to keep a resource for all the time. So you just bring them in as you need it. So that's a pretty common thing to do. Or you may need to have, suddenly you've got a new project and you need to scale up. You know, you can't hire that fast, but you can bring a partner to, and then you can slowly hire and then, do that. So there are, I mean, outsourcing has its place and it'll continue to be, have its place. There are various things which you may not want to build in-house, or you may not have the necessity long term, so you build it with a partner. And but the core part of the, like for example, Intuit's QuickBooks product, like that you should build in-house because that's what you sell to your customer. You want your employees to understand the customer. You want your employees to understand what it takes to build a great product for your customer. But to if you were to doing online registration form, now that can be done through a partner because that's not important. I mean, that's still important, but it's not something I impact the user experience as much.
Got
So
it. Got it, Nilesh. So you multiple times you mentioned about the GCC should think the end customer is a customer, right? But how many times they get the exposure, right? Many times they do infra management, they do some processes and other things, right? So I think how do you ensure even if I'm saying that I'm doing application development which is going to be impacting the customer, if I really don't understand how the customer uses, especially if it is a B2B process, right? I think if it is a B2C, is still you will get a vibe of it, right? I think as a user. But in
yeah,
B2B, how do you train them saying that hey, this is how the
yeah.
customer
So
uses?
great point. So when we did when I did Intuit, Intuit didn't even sell outside of US. All our customers were in US, right? And in India, we one of our software and Intuitive tax software. So people in US can do your own taxes.
Right.
India, nobody does their own taxes, right? I mean, at least as far as I know, you just go to an accountant and do it. So the concept of doing your own taxes wasn't something people could relate to, or the concept of doing a small business accounting, right? Wasn't something people could relate to. Like, it's like Tally software, but Tally, if you have a business, the business owner is not doing Tally. He has an accountant who does the
Yeah.
Tally work, right? Whereas in the US, the owner can actually be working on QuickBooks, right? So it's very different. It's a sales. So it's very hard for an engineer to understand that. So what we did was a few things. We used to have whenever an engineer visited the US or a manager or leader visited the US, we asked them to go to a customer site and observe the customer and understand the customer. And then when they came back to India, they used to do a presentation. Hey, this is what I saw, this is my experience, this and that. So that's one way. Second thing, if you go to Intuit office even today, I think they still have it. There's a phone booth there. So in
Okay.
the phone booth, there's a phone. You pick up the phone and you can live hear a customer support call. So if a customer is calling our support, they can hear that conversation. So you can decide, okay, I'm working on a QuickBooks product. I want to listen to QuickBooks calls. I pick up a phone, and a customer calls and said, hey, I was doing this, and I was having trouble. So you get real live understanding of what kind of calls
Wow.
the call center is getting, right? So those are some of the things we had to put in place so that the people understood the customer problems. And so you have to do it is not as easy simple. You have to put in some effort, but it's all nowadays it's not that hard because you can see a YouTube video. And 20 years ago, some of these were not that easy, right? But now it's so much easier, and you can do FaceTime and whatever WhatsApp calls and whatever. It's much easier, but still it requires some effort on the part of the leadership to figure out how do you bring the engineers close to the customer. Maybe they should be required to listen into some sales calls, listen into some product management or customer support calls, too, so that they can understand. Nice thing with B2B was, as I mentioned earlier, that the B2B is customer is also sitting in India. So like BMC software, maybe selling something to Intuit. So now the BMC software engineers can go and meet the engineers at Intuit and say, hey, are you using this? Can you tell me what are your problems? So you can do that too. So it's becoming much easier because almost every enterprise customer, any enterprise like Salesforce, almost
Correct.
every customer of Salesforce has an office in India,
Correct. Correct.
right?
Yeah.
And so they can actually meet right there. So you can make it happen. So it does take some effort, it does take some planning, but it's definitely possible now. So, but you definitely want to bring the engineering people close to the customer because that's the only way you can really get the customer empathy. You can understand what it takes to build great products. So,
Sure. So, no, even if someone say that, hey, I get the customer this one, but owning like a P&L, right? Is a tectonic shift, right? I think because you need to own the complete value chain, I think from a delivery to center of excellence to product to P&L, true. So there are multiple steps people need to cross, right? Do you see that? I think the owning the P&L, I think you gave few examples, Nilesh, right? But do you think that in the near future that is going to happen? Or we're still long way to go.
No, I mean it is already starting to happen. So it's not unique. It may be slower than actually owning the technology and the product. So product management and all that will happen faster, and it's already starting to happen. But P&L also, as I told you, Adobe's entire business unit was run by Naresh Gupta, who was sitting in Noida, right? And he owned both the entire P&L for that product, right? So, and that is starting to happen more and more. But that might take a little longer, but it's a matter of time.
Sure.
So
And you multiple times you mentioned about the it's a leader who primarily drives it, right? So that comes to the leadership mind share, right? And we see that a lot of GCC is hiring from IT services, right? I also earlier worked in Infosys, also in leadership with Tech Mahindra. With all due respect, we see that the IT services mindset is like whatever the customer says, we accept, right? Yes, right. And normally, don't go and question them, right? Hey, why it is being done? Not like a colleague, not like a equal, but we also say the customer is saying we need to just do it. So when it comes to GCC, that is not the way you expect, right? You sometimes you can question your boss, say why it is done, give your recommendation. So do you see that? Is there any way where even Zinnov trains the mid-level people, saying that hey, you need to think like this, because that if that gap is not there, the people are going to behave in the same way. So from the leadership training, either at the mid-level or even at a senior level, how Zinnov does it, or even as a broad how the GCs are doing it,
yeah,
maybe.
so we do have a leadership training where we help people. We have a leader called Mani, who's our head of L&D, and so that is an important part of how do you how do you interact in a meeting, because as you rightly said, if you come from a services background, your basic way of approaching is I'll do what the customer tells me. In fact, tomorrow I was just writing an article when the call started. The heading of it is basically, if you're an outsourcing company, you do what the customer tells you. In a GCC, you observe the customer, understand his problems, and come up with great solution which the customer didn't even know can be possible. So there's a
Mm.
difference, right? So in a GCC, you have to take a very different approach because even who the customer is different, right? For GCs, for Infosys, the customer is Intuit. For Intuit employee, the customer is a small business user or the guy who's right doing the taxes. So it's a very different mindset. And so a lot of our customers, they are reluctant to hire people from services companies because of exactly what you just said. Because they don't want
Okay.
people. In fact, I'll tell you a story. When I started the Intuit office, we five of us had come to visit. So before we started the office, we wanted to start with an outsourcing provider. So we visited Cognizant, Infosys, Patni Computers at that time, Persistent, and HCL to understand. We went to their side, and one of the things which I had told them that I don't want to meet your marketing team. I want to meet your engineers,
Okay.
right? I had specifically said, like 2 hour meeting with your engineers. I don't want any marketing people in that meeting, and you need to go away, and I want to talk to your engineers. And as part of that discussion, I had sent them a requirements document to each of these five companies saying, this is a document I want them to come and discuss with us in that meeting. So what we were observing in that meeting, the reason we want to do that, are these engineers pushing back on something? So we purposely kept the requirements vague. They were not very clear. So we wanted them to say, hey, this doesn't make any sense. Can you tell us uh, this seems incomplete. So only in Bangalore, people did that to us. So we opened up an office in Bangalore. We
Wow.
went to we went to Noida for HCL. We went to Pune and Chennai. None of those people would question. They said, okay, yeah, we can build this. But we know they couldn't build because it was not very clear. But in the Bangalore office, where we met one of the vendors, their engineer said, this, I'm sorry to say, but these requirements are not very clear. These are the missing parts to it. So that's when we decided, okay, this is where we want to be. So, this is 20 years ago, and some of that still exists. That people, so we want people who are not scared of questioning, not questioning for wrong reasons, for the right reasons, pushing back and all of that. And that's an important part. And that's something which you have to constantly build, constantly encourage them to do it, and do the training, figure out all that. It's becoming more and more easy when people interact more, once they start building the relationships with the global teams. Now that they can do videos, Zoom calls and video calls and all that, it's becoming easier, but it's still something. The other thing is, as our culturally, we don't like to question people higher ups, right? Like, right? That's just like, we don't question our parents, right? That's kind of so something that we have to. So you are not supposed to question your boss. It's like, in fact, that's one of the questions I ask in my interviews. Tell me one time where you had a disagreement with your boss, and what do you do about it? That's one of my standard questions. So,
Got it, Nilesh. Very interesting anecdote, right? Great. I think I didn't realize that we are almost end of the time you have shared. So probably I can ask a couple of questions. So I see that you said now we have 1900 and so many good use cases or case studies of the GCC performing well. Do you think that the floodgates have been opened and you see flurry of GCCs coming in? What are the challenges still the companies are seeing that why they hesitant? If I say there are hundreds of thousands of companies outside, right? And why that kind of floodgate has not happened, if I put it that way, right? What are the challenges they see in opening a GCC in India, Nilesh?
yeah, I mean, it's, partially, all this anti-globalization stuff which is going on right now, right? And that's obviously one of the things have been a little bit more cautious. But I'm not seeing any major. I mean, there's a short-term lull because of these. People are still trying to figure out, you know, what will be the impact on my business for all these policies. So they don't want to make a decision without knowing that. But we we expect almost 80% growth in the next 5 to 6 years on the GCC side. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. Our business has been doing really well. So it's not, we have consistently been growing over the last few years. Uh, um, so I think it's happening more and more. I mean, we sign up new customers almost regularly, very regularly. So we are not seeing any major slowdown in this. The only thing I think where we have to think about is, how is AI going to impact this? Because
Okay.
right, I don't know, you saw the announcement. Amazon just said we're going to not need as many people, so they're going to start laying off people. This today they announced, right?
But Google is
So,
hiring more engineers. If
yeah,
you
yeah.
see there,
Even Microsoft is, because you don't need as many
no,
engineers.
no,
I was
Google
talking
is
to,
hiring more engineers, I think,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
in India, but I was talking to another customer. They said they are seeing 20% increase in productivity. But
Okay.
fortunately, right now their roadmap is so big that they don't need to hire less. But eventually, if they continue to see 20% increase in productivity, they're going to need 20% less people, right? So that can impact. But it's something which I think that's a few years away right now. I believe it's not something which is affecting right now. But I think right now, actually, because companies need AI, frankly, the only place they can get engineers is India. Where else are they going to go?
Right.
Right? So I think that's actually going to be a huge tailwind to India in the coming months. The only thing is India needs to do is, all these people, they have to go up the value chain.
Right.
Yeah,
So, Nilesh,
you have to.
yeah, sorry to interrupt. So, you made a very nice point, but I would try to counter, right? I even read the Zinnov report on the SME GCCs opening in India, right? I think in the last quarter or so, I think I'm not going exactly into the number, but I'm saying that some predominant number of GCCs are from, SME category. And that number is huge, right? It is unlike a Fortune 2000, anyway, it's Fortune 2000 only, right? But the SME category is so huge. Then why not? I would say if the 80%, why not 800%, right? I'm saying why thousands of GCs are opening every year. I think I know I'm shifting it. So still, what is stopping them?
No,
In
I mean, see, the majority of them are still working. It's not like just because they don't have GCC, they are not working with India, right? Almost every company has an outsourcing relation. There are 10,000 companies with outsourcing relationships,
Okay.
right? So that they're comfortable with that. They don't see the need to change, right?
Sure.
If people don't like to change a newspaper every day, right? I mean, so, you know, right? You're
Okay.
used to using the Hindu or the Times, you kind of stick to that.
Right.
So, because it's working for them, it's been not an issue.
Got
And
it.
so they don't have to, but even then, a lot of companies are doing it. Right now, they are starting to start. In fact, we have we are working with a customer. They've been in India for the last 10 years. They're just starting to think about GCC, right? So it's not that they're not, so almost every company is working with global talent. It's just a matter of whether you're doing it through your own GCC or you're doing through an outsourcing. For India, it doesn't matter. It's
And
just,
so it's still job coming into it,
in
right?
India. So it's a question of, am I, I may not want to take that. I mean, it's working fine for me, so why change it, right? But because they haven't seen the advantage of it. So my job is to show them the difference. Hey, outsourcing is important. Continue to work with that. Even companies like a lot of companies in India today who have a GCC, they still have 60% outsourcing. You know that, right?
Right. Right.
So they're still working with outsourcing, which is fine. That's okay, right? In
Right.
fact, I believe that once you come to India, when Intuit came to India, the outsourcing work even increased even faster because now I have local teams managing it. So I'm a lot more comfortable with it. So it's actually so it's a question of people are working globally or anywhere. It's a question of they need to go to. So I don't think it's basically going up, check going here or there, right? I don't think it matters from a overall employment perspective. So
No, but it goes up as a GCC. Normally the value chain as a people goes up in the value chain, right? And to
is
that
a value.
extent,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So that does matter. So that's something which we have to encourage the companies to. And that's what we are doing, right?
Right.
That's what I do. So we have brought, 100, almost 200 GCCs over the last, so many years,
Okay.
right? So we will continue to do that. And over the last 20 years, we have probably hired 150,000 plus people. So these
Oh.
are all jobs which we have been able to help create. So
Definitely, definitely, Nilesh. You already touched upon the people has to be improved, right? I think in terms of higher education or for the new age technologies. Other than that, what do you see again internally? What is the gap in terms of onboarding more GCCs? Is it the infra or is it the
yeah,
talent or because the cost has already shot up here itself is not as much encouraging what India could do
yeah,
to
I think,
attract more.
yeah, I think I would say two main things is in the infrastructure, like, Bangalore, you know, people are now moving more to Hyderabad because of the infrastructure in Bangalore, right? That's one thing. The infrastructure continues to be one of the things they need to focus. The second one is education. I mean, India produces close to 1 million plus engineers every day, right? Every year.
Yeah, right,
But only a certain portion of that is able to go to GCCs, right?
right,
So how do you go up the value chain, right? That's another area. So we have to think about is I would say those are the main things. There are some other minor issues like talent churn, but that has gone down quite a bit. The attrition numbers and all that are starting to reduce. But otherwise, I don't think it. Frankly, it's. I think I would say it's making sure that the people are ready to be employed by GCC. So the education part of it, strong communication. See, in India, we don't focus on communication in our education much. At least just STEM is the more important part, right? But but when you're going for global companies, communication becomes very critical. So those are some of the areas which you need to focus on. Is to how do you make communication an important part? How do you present your ideas? How do you sell? Everybody is a salesperson, whether they like it or not, because
right,
right, you have to sell your ideas. Right? In a
right,
GCC, that becomes even more important. If you want to be a GCC, you have to sell your ideas. You need to learn how to influence other people. So those are the skills which at least in education in India is not, at least I have not been in India education for a long time, so I don't know the latest. But it's not it never used to be the focus. So, but I see now my niece and nephew and all that very confident people. So I guess it might be changing. So these are very confident people who are, they, I know the young people in India are a lot very confident. So I see I feel very optimistic about India's prospects. So
Fantastic, fantastic, Nilesh. So probably a personal question, like you have seen, I think you're wearing different hats, right, as well as even, personally also. So, what is your kind of, I won't say advice, what's your thoughts for people to have global role, but they may not have the great access, right? So, what could they do, right, in terms of the studies or in their, I think their way they present, what could they do so that they can attract the best company and flourish there, right? And having a
yeah.
global role at some time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think focus on outcomes, not activities. Like
Okay.
focus on, as I said earlier, focus on what you are trying, the impact you're having on the business, right? I just did a post on LinkedIn on exactly this topic, saying, how do you get a job in a GCC, right?
Okay.
Uh, keep up with the current trends. Don't wait people to tell you, you need to be ahead of the curve, because in technology, things change so fast. If you're not keeping up, you'll be left behind pretty quickly. Again, focus on making a difference to the company's business, not just doing tasks, right? I tell my team, if your goal is to reduce weight, focus on that. Don't tell me I ran 5 kilometers. If that did not reduce, but you ate like double of what you normally eat, then it doesn't help, right? Your weight is still not going to reduce. Your focus is on so your focus should be on the outcomes, not activities, right? Focus on keeping up with the current trends. Improve your communication. Figure out how to influence what you just said. It's okay to be able to debate with your boss and your colleagues on right things. Learn to do that. So those are some of the things which I would say are critical for you to uh, you know to get up, and people will notice when you make that difference. So
Great. Fantastic, Nilesh. No, so probably we are coming to the end, and thanks a million for taking your time and sharing the valuable insights. I'm sure the audience will, really enjoy as much, I have done. So thanks a lot, Nilesh.
thanks, Shankar. I really enjoyed it, and you really have some good story. You get things out of people really nicely. So thank you for that. So
Oh, thanks a lot. I believe at least that is, and I would say, yeah, positive feedback for me. I will take it up like that. Yeah. Thanks,
no,
Nilesh.
thank you so much. So.